Hello and welcome to Views from the Sideline. I'm your host, Joey Tysick. Alongside me, my partner, Malik Hill. It's July 15th. We got some more sports news happening, and it's getting crazy. First topic that we're going to talk about today is unfortunate news and stuff that we don't necessarily want to talk about because we don't want it to happen, but it might happen, and there's starting to be more realization that that could be the case. College football might be moved, possibly not even played this year. Malik, hit us with the knowledge.
First I'm gonna get to the junior college thing first because the Division I football thing it hurts my heart to even talk about it. Junior college football is moving to the spring. They announced it last week. I'm not surprised that one of the lower levels already did it because big time D1 football is so much money that comes through there through merchandising and tickets and all that stuff. So they're still trying to figure out ways to get some kind of season going. But yeah, junior college, they already announced they're going to move to the spring. Then you go over to the Ivy League sports. All those schools have canceled their fall sports, all of them. So it looks like it's getting closer and closer to the point where the biggest schools, all the powerhouses, they're going to have to come to a decision very quickly because we're seeing with basketball teams right now, because it's basketball, it's 11, 12 men teams. One person gets corona, they sit out, they quarantine for however long they have to. It's not that huge of a thing. Like the TBT tournament, they went through their whole thing and they just finished.
Yeah.
There was only one team that dropped out because a few of their players got the coronavirus. So, yeah, in terms of that, plus the NBA, it's big time professional sport, most likely going to happen. But yeah, when it comes to this college football, so many players on a team, so many players on a staff. If one person gets it, they can spread it to so many people.
Yeah, and I think the NBA came out with their stats early on. They've had 3 cases so far in the bubble out of the 300 and so many. So far that number is pretty good, and they can isolate it and contain it pretty well.
One of their superstars just got it, Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that and if that's going to affect anything. But yeah, it's a little bit disheartening that college football might not be played. That's slowly becoming more and more of the thought, especially as California, Florida, places where there's big college football teams, their cases are rising again. And people don't know if it's going to be able to be done. And I think, like you said, it's going to rely on the Power 5. Like, if one of the Power 5 conferences says we're not going to play, that's going to be a big indicator, which I think the Big Ten has already said that they're thinking about doing only in-conference games, or they're not going to play any out-of-conference games.
I think most Power 5 conferences are trying to come to that.
Yeah,
come together on that, right?
Which to me, I don't know if that helps the situation anymore, really, because you're still traveling, you're still seeing a bunch of other places, you're still having to get on planes and buses and things like that, and I just think it's not gonna matter. Now, obviously I want college football. I want to be able to talk about something on this show, and I think professional is going to be a little bit different, perhaps, but maybe not. Like the NFL, I think they're gonna play and they're gonna try, but I could see the NFL also playing and then having to shut down or something because they'll be in a similar boat. But I think, like you said, because it's a professional league and they're making all this money, then they're gonna push it more.
Goodell's most likely gonna start the NFL season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see on that because obviously we're gonna have baseball coming up in a couple weeks. We got the NBA a couple weeks away.
I'm actually gonna watch baseball. If it comes,
why not? It's one of the only things.
Exactly.
It's one of the only things on.
It's live sports. I'm gonna
And there's not a long dragged on season like there normally is. So there's a lot of things up in the air, and we have some other sports that are gonna kind of lead the way, but it's a big question mark. And I know, speaking from, we here at ONTV like to we're on sports for high school. That's up in the air. That's gonna come next week. The MHSAA is going to decide what they're going to do about their fall sports.
They still haven't decided if people are going back to school.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a whole other thing. Everything is just a mess right now.
So there's so many question marks. Do you think ultimately that college football is going to be played this season?
I think it's eventually going to be moved to the spring. Now, how that works out with there's so much the NCAA, they already have so much on their back before this started.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to eligibility of seniors, you have this new thing of states are already legalizing college athletes being able to take like money for advertisements and stuff like that. They they also have to try and figure that out somehow in the next few years while this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna. I have no idea how they're gonna figure it out. I feel like they'll figure out a way, but if you have a college football season in the spring, where's the NFL draft gonna go?
Yeah.
And then do you just roll right back around to the fall and just kick the season off like everything is normal?
Right.
Like how this is all gonna work? Incoming freshmen, there's no like enrolling early for freshmen if you do it in the spring. So
Yeah.
all freshmen come in the summer, they'll be behind. I'm sure even guys that are upperclassmen will be kind of behind. Meshing teammates, coaches getting fired, hiring it's all just crazy right now. But
Yeah.
I think there is a chance they will try spring football, but how that works out, who knows right now.
Yeah. And that's one of the proposals that I've seen high school football even talk about. So I don't even know. Uh, Tune into OAA now, uh, next week, and they'll talk about it because that's supposed to come. The other thing is that this spring, summer, I was super excited for. We were supposed to get March Madness, the Olympics, NBA playoffs. Like, it was my dream to be able to watch all these things at once.
This March Madness was probably going to be one of the most like out there weird ones.
Yeah.
Dayton had a chance to get to the championship,
Yeah.
like a real legit good chance.
And now, if they just theoretically, if they move college football to the spring, college football would then have to compete with March Madness, NBA playoffs.
Yeah. I've also seen something with college basketball saying they might try to start in January. So yeah, who knows how that shortened season will work? How that'll come with conference tournament? Yeah,
I wouldn't mind it for college basketball, to be honest, because then they don't play those rinky-dink non-conference games at the beginning of the year.
I like the preseason tournaments.
You do, yeah. You miss the preseason tournaments, and you miss, like a couple big matchups, like the Michigan State versus North Carolina or Duke or something.
I was Michigan State versus Duke. I was looking forward to that game so much, but it probably won't happen now.
Yeah,
because basketball will probably go to a like strictly conference thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks, and pretty soon, I think we're going to start getting a lot of answers, and it's either going to be really exciting or really disappointing, I think. So we'll have to wait and see for the next couple weeks. Like I said, professional sports are going to start up. We're going to see what happens, and then I think that's going to help make decisions for other leagues and things.
At this point, if we get college football before next fall, I'll be happy. Like I'd just waiting an entire year for college football to come back around would just be it'd be terrible.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on, NFL got a couple things we want to talk about. A couple guys got some big contracts. Myles Garrett, for the Cleveland Browns, got 5 years, $125 million. After his whole drama thing this season that happened. Chris Jones for the Kansas City Chiefs also got a big paycheck. I still have to look that up. But what do you think this means for, especially like defensive players? Like, this is pretty big money for defensive players, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Aaron Donald kind of broke the mold a few years ago when the Rams gave him the biggest contract for a defensive player in NFL history. But since that, and now with this Pat Mahomes thing, even though the Pat Mahomes contract, I hope people realize it's kind of a one-off. This thing hasn't happened and it might not ever happen again. But it will lead to players getting more money. There are guys that will be coming up in the next few years. Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott right now. There are young quarterbacks that will be Lamar Jackson, guys that will be demanding these big contracts. Do you see what Ryan Tannehill just got?
Yeah.
It wasn't anything insane, but Ryan Tannehill getting that type of money is pretty insane.
For having basically one good season.
Yeah, there are guys that can go out there and say, hey, I led you to the playoffs this one season. We might have just won one game, but I took you farther than you've been in the last few years. Give me my money. And what are franchises supposed to do? Quarterback is the most important position in football, especially the NFL. You have to have a guy that can get it done, unless you have an all-time great defense, which it doesn't happen all the time. You got the 2000 Ravens, you got the Broncos a few years ago when Peyton Manning's arm was falling off. And that's almost it. There's not many more instances after that. So if you don't have the quarterback, there's a good chance you won't get there. So the guys are going to be getting wild money. That's strictly from the quarterback position, but on defense too, guys that are that high level playmaker, that are like up for defensive player of the year, year in, year out, they're going to start getting these big contracts.
Yeah. Chris Jones got 4 years, $85 million. So that's still pretty good for
a defensive tackle, that's pretty good.
And as you were talking about quarterback, that's kind of segueing into what we really wanted to talk about, of course, in the NFL. Dak Prescott still kind of in those franchising contract talks that seem to go nowhere almost, and nobody's really sure what's going to happen. He's been asking for big money for a long time. Cowboys haven't really given him that. They're talking about franchising him, that I think puts him somewhere in the $30 million a year range, something like that, a little bit more than that. But I don't know how they're going to, if they're going to go through with it or not, or whether or not they're going to sign something and then try to trade him away. Dak is up in the air, and the reason we bring it up is because it's very similar to the Matthew Stafford situation. Something that I heard on the radio was, would you take Dak Prescott over Matthew Stafford? Because this year is the last year, I believe, of Stafford's contract, that, if he doesn't perform well, do we want to move on from him? Do we want to try to trade him? What do you want to do? And one person brought up, well, Dak Prescott could be a potential target for something like that. What are your feelings on Dak Prescott over Stafford, or Stafford over Dak Prescott? Or do you not have any feelings towards it?
Well, I think first of all, we can try to set aside our biases, but the truth is, I was a Lions fan. I'm not really one anymore. You're still a Lions fan, and I'm pretty sure we both hate the Cowboys, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's no Cowboy love over here.
Mm-hmm.
So when you set all that aside, I think it's clear, career to career, even though Dak Prescott hasn't played for a long time, Dak Prescott couldn't do what Matthew Stafford has done in Detroit. And I think you have to have the type of gunslinger mentality that Matthew Stafford has to succeed as many years as he has in Detroit, and to not just fall off like almost every quarterback in Lions history has. There's maybe 2 or 3 really good quarterbacks in Lions history, and Matthew Stafford is the best. His numbers show it, and people always try to throw blame on him. They try to ignore the coaching. They try to ignore the fact that a lot of times the defense won't step up when he does his job. There are times when the other parts of the offense don't step up. He's had a good offensive line, maybe 3.5, 4 years of his entire career. Besides that, he's had to just do with what he has. He deserves his respect. Even though he got that crazy contract a few years ago, I couldn't blame the Lions for doing it, because outside of him, what's your best option? They were coming off of playoff seasons. Matt Stafford has done so much for the city of Detroit as a player, and he deserves the respect. I don't think Dak Prescott could do that here. Even though he's put up really good numbers in Dallas, he stepped into a situation that was ready to go and ready to possibly win a championship. He had the best O-line from the jump. He got Ezekiel Elliott. He had Des Bryant when he walked in. He had Jason Witten. Then they got Amari Cooper. Now he has CeeDee Lamb. I mean, his riches just keep growing. It hasn't been that for Matthew Stafford. Golden State and Calvin Johnson have been his best weapons, and outside of that, what's your list?
Golden Tate.
I said.
I know.
He had Nate Burleson in for a few years.
Yeah, he was all right.
Yeah, that was okay.
And then you just think of the guys now.
Kenny Galladay is growing into a number one receiver, but he's not there yet. And I love what Marvin, what's the last name?
Jones.
I love what Marvin Jones does. He makes so many tough, like crazy contested catches that extend drives. But he's not a number one receiver, to be honest. So he's had to do with what he's had his entire career, and he's done enough. But Louis Riddick said something, the analyst on NFL Live, he said something about a month ago that I completely agree with. The Lions failed Matthew Stafford in his time here. He had Calvin for that time. 2013 was the one year they had a complete team.
Mm-hmm.
The next year they had like half a team. Still made the playoffs because Matthew Stafford was dragging them to wins every game. And since then, you have what?
Nothing. They find and they're similar where they were middle of the road, similar to the Pistons, where you get like locked in where you can't make a turnaround because you're not going to get a good draft pick, and you're not going to make the playoffs, so you can't make any like noise or headroom for free agency or anything. So you're just stuck in the middle, which is like the worst place to be. So I agree with that, and I'm in the similar boat. I think Stafford is maybe not better necessarily than Dak Prescott.
He makes mistakes because he's the gunslinger guy. Gunslingers always make boneheaded plays at times because they're willing to take the risks that other guys aren't.
Yeah, and there's
but those types of guys you need for these types of franchises.
And they're similar in a way where they both have moments where they just look outstanding. Like they look like they could be top-notch quarterbacks. And then all of a sudden there's a game where it's like, what is he doing? Where's that coming from? And you get confused. They're both not very good in the playoffs so far, necessarily. Again, not putting all the blame on Stafford, not putting all the blame on Dak Prescott, but
the Cowboys lost. He did everything he could.
Yeah.
They had the lead, and that defense gave the game away.
Yeah.
Plus a terrible call. But there was nothing Stafford could do against Seattle that next year. It was the Legion of Boom in their prime.
Yeah.
What do you expect?
So now another scenario that I'll throw out, because we're both kind of in agreement. Don't really think we need Dak Prescott. I don't think he gets the Lions anywhere that Stafford can't, I guess. Like, even if he does better, I don't think he doesn't put us over the top to make it to like a Super Bowl or something, or make a playoff run.
I think he stays healthy because he can take more of the hits.
Right.
But I think eventually it would wear him down. And he doesn't have the skill set that Stafford has that can will the Lions to wins.
Yeah.
Like he would make throws that would literally like just spark up the entire offense and team and just lead them to a touchdown drive and like keep the game going. I don't think Dak Prescott does that. He's an accurate passer. At times, he's very accurate. He has a good completion percentage. Doesn't throw many picks. But yeah, I don't think there have been too many quarterbacks in Detroit that have come and tried to play it safe.
Yeah. And so that leads me to, well, if Dak, depending on what happens, if Dak goes to free agency or something and he doesn't get signed with the Cowboys.
Don't they have him on a franchise?
Yeah, that's what they're talking about. There's a bunch of different scenarios that I guess could happen. But even if they keep him or try to trade him or whatever happens with Dak, that will allow a team possibly that doesn't have a quarterback to maybe go after Dak or make a move for Dak or something like that. Then the Lions, depending on what they want to do with Stafford, if they want to move on from Stafford next year, they could try to look for a trade partner, do something like that, and then somebody that doesn't have a good quarterback gets Stafford, somebody else gets Dak or something, even if the Cowboys keep him around. That just opens up options for teams to not take Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, which then could potentially, depending on obviously if the Lions have another dud of a season, that the Lions could turn around and get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, which I think would be a much better option than trying to go for Dak or something.
For that to happen, Stafford would probably have to get hurt. Because as long as he's playing, they're going to try to win as many games as possible.
Right.
Which, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's just a scenario to throw out there, and it's something interesting. And it brings me to the point of that if the Lions are gonna go for a new quarterback, I don't want them to get somebody that we already know who Dak Prescott is. Yes, he's still young, he's got plenty of years left,
Yeah,
but
but
we've seen
yeah,
enough of him to know what we're getting out of him.
this is the Dak we're gonna get.
Yeah, exactly. So, if the Lions are gonna get a new quarterback, as much as I don't think Stafford has been the problem, I've said it multiple times, if they're to move on from him, I think you have to just go through the draft. You have to really restart and get a new quarterback molded into this system, especially while the team is kind of getting younger now, as we're slowly kind of doing. We're still kind of in that weird rebuild slash trying to win deal,
Yeah,
which is confusing, but
which killed the Pistons for years.
exactly. So,
Detroit teams need to learn.
yeah, so at least then they would have a full restart, I think, and that would work better, and I would be much more excited for that. Um, do you have a similar feeling? Like, would you rather them go for just a new quarterback rather than, I don't know, signing some guy that we already know about, like Dak or something,
Oh yeah, I'd much rather
or
them.
trading for, like, people have talked about, because Cam Newton's on that 1-year deal or something, trading for Cam Newton or trying to go after Cam Newton. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've said, even though I respect Matthew Stafford and what he's done for the Lions and Detroit sports, I said I think it's time for him to go. I wish they would have traded him or figured out a way to get rid of him and draft Tua. I think that would have gave the franchise some juice and gave him a spark. But too late for that now. They're still invested in Stafford. The chances of them trading him seem slim now because they really just they are in love with him, and I think he might retire here.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah.
I
At
mean, I
this,
could see it.
I don't see them completely like flipping all of a sudden. Like, okay, we're going into a full. The Lions have never been that smart. Going into a full rebuild has never been their thing. They always try to win, and that's how they end up losing because they don't have what it takes to win, but they just keep pushing it for some reason. That's how franchises that lose always keep losing. So yeah, I think Stafford is here to stay as long as he wants. Honestly, trading him would be the smart move. They've traded other stars off the defense. It seemed like they were doing that to make some moves and try to maybe rebuild. I don't know, but yeah, if they keep Stafford, there's no sign of a rebuild at all. And yeah, it's just stubborn.
Okay. So I looked into it a little bit more as you were talking. Dak Prescott, his supposed final offer that the Cowboys had given him for an extension, is somewhere between 33 and 35 million dollars a year, with 100 million guaranteed. So that would, if it was 35, that would put him second behind Patrick Mahomes as far as money as quarterbacks go.
Man,
Um,
we knew
and
we knew Dak would ask for that for that type of money.
yeah, and
They made him mad.
so then the other option is that he would earn about 32 million on the franchise tag, which then if they franchised him, then he would be an unrestricted free agent after this season. So that's where it starts to get interesting, is after this season. He has to make that deal either for an extension or franchise tag by 4 o'clock today. So
Very
next
soon.
so next week
Very
we'll
soon.
probably be talking about it.
Yes.
I don't know if it'll happen in this time, but it's just something interesting. And then if he goes into free agency, that's where it becomes probably where Dallas isn't going to keep him, because somebody else will probably try to overpay for him or something like that. So that's where everything kind of culminates after this season, where a lot of things could happen, I guess. And again, like I said, a lot of teams are going to be looking at, there's guys like Stafford, there's guys like Dak Prescott, but then in the draft, there's Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And like I said, I think out of those guys, I'd rather have the new blood. We know what Stafford and Dak can do. Now, I guess the only change that I would make to that statement is that a team that maybe like the Patriots, like if Cam Newton doesn't work out, they could go make a stab at Stafford, because Stafford with an offensive line and a defense, who knows what he could do. Like if he's on a real contender team, I think he could make some noise. But any of those middle of the road type teams, similar to the Lions and things, I think we know what you're going to get out of him. So at that point, I would rather have Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, try something new. So that's interesting. And we'll have to see. 4 o'clock. If only we started maybe an hour later.
They're gonna pay him. They have no other choice.
You think so?
What else? What else are they gonna do?
Well, they just franchise him, and then,
they do have Andy Dalton in the fold.
But
the redheaded slinger.
To me, the crazy thing is that Dak wants more than $35 million a year, or that he thinks that he's worth more than $35 million a year.
They pushed him. They shouldn't have pushed him. They should have just went with what was there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they had to make it complicated. They're the Cowboys. That's why they had to make it complicated.
Yeah,
that's what they always.
I don't know. Especially when they just paid Amari Cooper, and Ezekiel Elliott's gonna have to get paid, I think, pretty soon. Which that's gonna be crazy enough. So anyway, we'll talk more about that next week because we probably won't get the info dropped by the end of the show today. So moving on, we wanted to talk about the NBA. We haven't talked about it a lot. They're gonna start. I think there's scrimmages with other teams start next week, and then the 30th, I believe, is like the first game or that weekend or something like that. So there's a lot of people that have been injured. There's a couple guys that have gotten the coronavirus, some that are sitting out. There's a lot of question marks in the NBA. So one of the ones I wanted to start with was the Lakers. Rajon Rondo injured his shoulder in practice, or he fractured his finger.
It was his hand.
He's hurt his shoulder before. He fractured like one of his fingers or his hand or something like that, and so he's going to be sitting out for this whole thing. Avery Bradley's already decided that he's going to sit out, and the Lakers were one of the favorites, and their problem going into the season was depth, and now they just lost 2 key roles to their team.
Yeah, and they lost. Losing Avery Bradley is one thing. He would have played well.
Mm-hmm.
They lost playoff Rondo.
That's true. That is true.
Think about that.
You
didn't lose regular Rajon Rondo.
You lost playoff Rondo.
You lost the guy.
Mm-hmm.
The monster. So.
The guy that always shows up in the playoffs. That's true. That's a good point. Do you think that this really changes the outlook for the Lakers? Like, could they lose earlier than the conference finals now? Because the one thing I've heard a lot of people say is that, well, they still have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, obviously. And LeBron James, with all this rest, people think is going to be a monster, which he very well could be. But do you think that these two guys sitting out could change how far the Lakers go? I mean, obviously, I think it'll change them from possibly making the finals, but do you think they could now see an early exit because of it? Or are they still just that good with their main talent that they'll be able to just still get past people?
I see some scares. I see some like rustiness coming out, figuring out LeBron is the point guard when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm.
So whether he brings the ball up or whoever else they have as a guard.
Alex Caruso.
The Caruso could bring the ball up, get some highlights. But most likely LeBron's going to play point guard because it's what he is at the end of the day. With him and Anthony Davis on any team, you're going to get wins. And with them on that Lakers team, with Kyle Kuzma, with Danny Green, they just added Henny God J.R. Smith.
Yeah.
Who knows how that's going to happen? There might be a game where he hits 7 threes. There might be games where he has no points.
He doesn't know the score.
It's
dribbles the ball away.
It's the entertainment factor of JR. He needs a reality show. He should have one in the bubble, to be honest.
Yeah.
But honestly, there should be behind the scenes in the bubble.
Check out
because
JaVale McGee does vlogs.
Yeah, there have been so many cool stories of like all the stuff going on and just funny stuff.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Yeah, I think there'll be rustiness. I think they'll start off slow. But eventually, once LeBron and Anthony Davis, once their connection gets going and they're on a roll, there's not much any team can really do. Because once they get going, them two alone are a nightmare. But if Kyle Kuzma's hot, and then if Alex Caruso is out there making plays, and they still have KCP, don't they?
I believe so.
Yeah. If KCP is hot or if Danny Green is hot, all these other dudes have to do is play their role, hit open shots, because LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to make everything else happen. So it's not that hard. They just got to they have to get back out there and play and get back to what they were doing so they can get comfortable again.
I wonder if they start Quinn Cook.
Honestly, I don't see why not.
That'd be interesting.
Quinn would probably be just as good as Mario Chalmers was with the Heat when it came to a point guard meshing with LeBron.
So I'm looking at their roster.
And LeBron used to go at Mario Chalmers' head sometimes because of how mad he'd get at him.
Yeah. So I mean, they still have like Alex Caruso, Quinn Cook, Jared Dudley, Danny Green. They've Taylor Horton Tucker. Dwight Howard ended up playing. Kyle Kuzma.
Look out for Taylor Horton. That was my guy from the draft a few years ago. Yeah, I still have some faith.
They do have Markieff Morris, J.R. Smith, Dion Waiters. J.R. Smith and Dion Waiters.
I did not realize.
Yeah, they signed him for this.
Oh,
so they still have depth, and they have guys that have played in meaningful games. So I think it's not going to hurt them a lot. I think Rondo will definitely hurt as far as like leadership, things like that.
We saw what him and Anthony Davis did in New Orleans that one series.
Yeah,
where them two completely dismantled the Blazers along with Drew Holiday too.
Yeah, and then Avery Bradley. Obviously, you're going to lose something on the defensive end, but they have Danny Green. So Danny Green is another one of those defenders that he can guard almost anybody. So I think it'll hurt them, but I don't know. I already had them probably losing to the Clippers in the conference finals. So I don't think it's going to affect them a whole lot. Potentially, it could hurt them in certain matchups, but we'll have to see who they're going to play to really know, because that 8th seed in the West is up in the air at the moment. So who knows what's going to happen. Who do you think is the favorite to win it all in this bubble? Like, so I'll give you a few things. Like, do you think the bubble helps any teams where there's no crowd, there's no hype to any of these guys? Like, does that help any teams, or does it move any of the teams down because of the environment? Do you think certain teams are going to look better because they're younger? There's a bunch of different factors. Do you think that changes anything for certain teams?
I honestly think there are a few teams, and honestly, most of them come out of the West for me. I think teams like Phoenix, Memphis, New Orleans, teams with those young guys that are excited for this opportunity, most of them first-time opportunities. You got Devin Booker, first time ever being in any type of playoff, like games that matter. You got Ja Morant. I think he's gonna show like a different level in this bubble. Then you have Zion, and Lonzo has a lot to prove. He's for his first time really on this level. I think those guys are gonna come out and show a lot. Especially, I think Devin Booker is gonna torch a lot of guys. I'm not sure how the rest of the team is gonna respond.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I mean, there's some tough vets on that team. You got Ricky Rubio. He's been in this situation. You got Aaron Baines, who's been in these types of situations. This is new for DeAndre Ayton. You've got Dario Saric, who's played in the playoffs. They have guys that have been there. And then Devin Booker, he's itching to drop 40 on these dudes. He's about to come out here and throw up like 12 threes in the first half, maybe.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a little too excited at first. Once he gets settled, I think he's going to really start going in on some people.
Yeah, and the problem with the Suns is they're 6 games behind, and they have 8 games to make up that ground.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to make any real like dent in it, but I just think some guys are going to come out and look really impressive.
Yeah, I'm in the similar boat. I think some people have something to prove. I also think I've heard some people say that this only gives fuel to Kawhi Leonard. It's perfect. He's Mr. No emotion. So to have no crowd, no nothing, and he just has to play hard on his own, it fits his personality perfectly. I also think that's similar with Giannis. Like Giannis he's like a hype guy. He definitely gets into the crowd and stuff, has a little more personality, but at the same time, he's just going to work every single time, and he doesn't need the spotlight necessarily. I mean, he plays in Milwaukee, for goodness sake. So I think it helps teams like that. To me, any teams that it might hurt, honestly, I could see it hurting like a team that's already sort of struggling going into this was the Rockets. I feel like the Rockets are that flashy, James Harden is that flashy kind of guy. Russell Westbrook's that flashy kind of guy.
How they play in this environment is going to be really interesting to see.
And something you brought up earlier, Russell Westbrook came down with the coronavirus, tested positive. So he's going to quarantine. He should be back just in time for the start, as long as obviously he clears all the protocol. But not being able to practice and things with his team, that's going to hurt. Now, physically, the guy is gifted beyond belief, so I don't think that's going to hurt him. It's only going to hurt his shooting, which he already struggles with a little bit.
Not a little.
Yeah. I mean, he's looked better at times.
His mid-range jumper is his game pretty much.
And this
But
year,
that three, no.
This year his three has been a little bit better because James Harden
Slight.
takes so many threes, and so it puts Russell Westbrook into a more controlled role, I guess I would say. But they're a team that I could see that this hurts because of just their style of play. Anybody else that it really affects?
To be honest, I think my surprise team, and listen to me on this one, all right? The Washington Wizards have no chance in this tournament. I had to set you up for that one.
Don't scare me like that.
I think the Brooklyn Nets are really going to surprise a lot of teams. First of all, Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie showed during the season. Mm-hmm. They have no problem carrying a team. What they did, especially near the end before we went into quarantine, Karis LeVert, that game in Boston, no young player with no real recognition goes into Boston and does something like that.
Yeah.
Him and Dinwiddie are the real deal, no question about it.
I'm loving what Karis LeVert is doing because coming out of college, I really didn't think he was going to do anything. I thought he was going to be a solid.
I had no idea what he'd be.
I thought he was going to be a solid role player. You know, he was going to be pretty good. But what we saw last year, towards the end before he got hurt, looked amazing. And then this year he comes back and he drops 50.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I also think having Jared Allen as that defensive force is really going to help.
And he's going to start because DeAndre Jordan's out.
Yeah. Thank you. And I also think this is going to be a great environment for hoopers. Dudes that you just give the ball to and say, get me buckets.
My man Joe Harris.
And Joe has that strap. That three-pointer is always reliable. But signing Jamal Crawford and Michael Beasley.
I forgot they signed Michael Beasley.
For this particular environment.
I mean, Jamal Crawford is made for this, yes.
Those two guys, listen, man. I know Michael Beasley he's on and off. There are games where he'll have 30, and then the next 5 nights he'll have nothing and no rebounds. But in this right here, rec league style, up and down, 5-on-5 atmosphere, Michael Beasley, he starts to show his real deal talent. People forget he honestly is one of the most gifted players in the NBA, or regardless of basketball players on the planet. He could never just put it all together into one total package to become that guy. But those two signings, I think those are going to pay off in those fourth quarters and in times where the team has a dry spell. Those two guys, they got things to prove. Jamal Crawford feels disrespected.
Yeah.
Because no team would pick him up.
Yeah. And I think the fun part too is that if they stay in the standings where they're at right now, the Nets will play the Raptors, which would be a fun matchup.
Really,
because that's two teams that have a similar thing. They're trying to prove something. The Raptors, everybody's like, "Oh, Kawhi Leonard's gone. The Raptors are back to the bottom of the barrel."
They're trying to show their regular season wasn't a fluke.
Yeah, and they're another team that they don't need the crowd. They play in Toronto. They don't get as much hype, especially with Kawhi being gone.
It's their fan base and nothing
right
outside of Toronto. Yeah, people don't really pay attention to the Raptors.
And Pascal Siakam is still getting better and better. Fred VanVleet he's trying to get a big contract in the offseason. And he's probably gonna get it.
Potentially one with
Detroit.
Fred VanVleet.
I'm still up in the air.
Chant it with me, Joey. Fred VanVleet. No.
I'll take LaMelo over Fred VanVleet, I think.
I would too, but we're not going to get a top 3 pick. You know this. You know how it goes.
But that would be a fun matchup to watch. Because I don't want, if the Nets played the Bucks are just going to run them over. I don't want to see Orlando versus Toronto, I don't think, necessarily. I'd rather see the Nets versus the Raptors.
I keep saying that thing is in Orlando, and people don't want to see Orlando. I just feel so bad for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Markelle Fultz, seeing what he'll do in that setting, because he's gotten a lot better since the the shoulder situation, which is
Yeah.
still affecting him.
And I mean, I'm a huge Vucevic fan, and I really like Mo Bamba. I like Jonathan Isaac, but
Don't forget about the truth, Evan Fournier.
oh, that's Chris's guy.
That's my guy too.
Aaron Gordon's fun to watch, but I think they're still they're like a year or two away from getting there fully. I think Markelle Fultz, if he keeps developing,
Yeah.
then there's a chance. But they're still missing like that lead guard. So Orlando, look, keep them at the 8th seed. Keep them there. What's another one?
Do you think there's a chance Sacramento could pull off some up?
No.
Uh,
They are in the same boat as New Orleans, but I just don't see it.
I don't know, man. Marvin Bagley is healthy.
I mean, De'Aaron Fox has become one of the best guards in the league, but
And listen, man, Bogdanovich is one of the secretly one of the best young guards in the league.
yeah.
But they're Sacramento, so people have no idea.
But
they have some pieces that can really do something.
yeah.
I think they could pull off one or two.
I mean,
maybe just a one or two.
And they're a
They could.
they're a deep team. They're deeper than you think, at least.
They got some solid veterans.
Yeah, Rashawn Holmes has become a much better player.
Harrison Barnes is playing his proper role, not being the guy.
Yeah. Nemanja Bjelica, Kent Bazemore, Harry Giles is becoming a lot better. They got Alex Len.
They got some solid pieces.
Corey Joseph, Dwayne Dedman.
I forgot they had Corey Joseph. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, they got some guys, but I don't think they're gonna be enough. Especially because you got teams like I said, New Orleans, Portland, Memphis. Those are the teams that you're chasing, and I think New Orleans is still riding high. They got all those young guys. Zion's gonna get all the calls. You know it.
Absolutely.
I love the Pelicans. I've been a big Pelicans fan. I love that they got Zion. But I do agree that the NBA is probably going to push Zion a little too much. And he's going to get some calls.
I have a Zion question.
Okay.
First big dunk he has in the bubble. Over under 6 straight replays they'll show of him dunking. Over or under. I'm saying they might go 7-8 in a row as the game is going on.
I was going to say,
look at that athleticism.
I was going to say, are we talking about throughout the rest of the game?
Oh no.
Or right after.
And then they might go to timeout and come right back with 3 more.
Man,
this Zion Williamson kid, you just look at his build. Just look at him, Joey.
I'm just trying to think because they'll go to multiple angles.
Oh, see,
I want to say under, but I'm scared.
They're gonna have new camera angles since this isn't a huge arena. They're gonna be right up close on the court.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a bit much.
No, I agree.
Is there any team that you feel like just shouldn't show up outside of Washington?
Probably Phoenix. I mean, I know you said they'll be a fun team to watch because of Devin Booker. I also think San Antonio, as weird as that is to say,
you might have a point. That is a solid point.
San Antonio this year was so disappointing, and they're just boring. And that's weird to say. But I think San Antonio is get them out of here.
I think their only chance of becoming something in the next few years is Lonnie Walker. How he developed, because he showed signs of being a superstar this year, but they were small signs and they still weren't playing that much.
Yeah.
For me, it's the Atlanta Hawks, man. I don't think they need to. Wait, they aren't here.
They're not here, no.
Oh,
no, because
I forgot.
the only Eastern Conference team that's not already locked in is the Wizards. Everybody else is.
The Knicks aren't there, Pistons aren't there, Hawks aren't there.
Chicago, Charlotte, Cleveland, they're all gone.
I wouldn't mind seeing Charlotte over Washington, honestly. I'd much rather watch Charlotte. I like those young guys. They played a lot better than you expected.
I can't be on Charlotte's bandwagon anymore.
But I had, for some reason, I thought maybe just because of Trae Young, I just figured the young superstar would be in the bubble.
That's what I thought. I thought the Hawks were going to be better, but they're just not yet.
I was like, they need that break until next season. They don't need to go to a bubble.
Another thing I wanted to bring up too is a lot of guys have thinned out during this COVID time. Supposedly, Zion Williamson has lost 25 pounds and gained 10 pounds of muscle.
I saw the practice highlights. He didn't lose 25
I don't know if
pounds.
that's. I don't know.
He had on a jersey and a long sleeve shirt. I'm sure they're trying to make it seem like he's all like chiseled now. He looks the exact same he looked when they were playing during the season.
Yeah. One of the big noticeable ones, or probably two actually, Nikola Jokic. That one is crazy because he looks thinner, which is kind of scary because like if that gives him a little bit more mobility, he already has the skill.
If he has any bit of quickness added,
Mm-hmm.
that'll be a nightmare because he doesn't need any bit of quickness to dominate in the post,
Right.
or be a great
And
passer.
he already has so much skill, just footwork, passing, things like that. That's incredible. The other one that I was actually impressed with was James Harden. I think over the past couple of years, James Harden has looked a little thicker the last couple of years.
Yeah,
He's
gotten
slimmed down.
He's been like secretly, well, not secretly. He's been one of the strongest players in the league the past few years.
Yeah.
And it kind of looks like chubbiness, but most of it is muscle.
Yeah, and he's had that almost that Paul Pierce style to his game. But now with this, I think getting him like he already has like a quick first step, but giving him just a little bit extra mobility again, similar to like a Jokic, could be really dangerous and it could be really good for him going forward. So I'm curious of how that's going to be. The other one that I want to bring up that people started bringing up on social media the past couple days, the resurgence of Skinny Mellow.
That highlight they posted on the ESPN Twitter page did kind of interesting.
Yeah.
He looks like he's in pretty solid shape. Plus, he hasn't cut his hair, so he's been serious.
So the problem that I have, and again, everybody knows I'm a big Carmelo fan. We saw this with Hoodie Mellow, and that didn't translate. That didn't translate to the court.
Don't get us started on that.
So
highlights of him shooting jumpers with nobody around with a hoodie on. Come on.
Yeah, but even now, like this whole Skinny Mellow thing, I don't know if Skinny Mellow is gonna change his game necessarily. I think
he's not gonna change his game.
I think he just needs to be on for Portland to be something.
I think he'll play harder.
Yeah,
he'll be even more engaged.
I think so too, and I think it's gonna help him overall. But it's not gonna be one of those transformations like Jokic or something where it's gonna it could possibly drastically change his game, I guess. Portland is another one of those teams that makes the West super interesting because I thought Portland was going to be way better this season going into it. I thought they made some decent moves. Obviously, with Nurkic still being hurt, that kind of messed them up a little bit. But I thought after like last season, they were going to be fantastic. They were going to be that team that you see in the regular season every year. But that makes it interesting now that they still have a chance that Memphis, Portland, and New Orleans are going to be those teams to watch because I think they're the best possibility of making that 8th seed. And then they possibly get that 8-9 matchup that they have for the bubble where they have a play-in style game, which would be so exciting for me, I think. Whether it's Portland or New Orleans, if I get Carmelo or the Pelicans to play, I'd be excited. But the problem is, like, I don't want John Morant to not play either because he's super exciting. That young Memphis team they're fun to watch too. So I'll take any of those three teams.
I still think Portland doesn't have much of a chance because
you think so?
That roster they put around Dame Lillard was just poor.
Let's check it out.
I don't think. Well, we don't need to look deeply into it.
Carmelo.
Anthony Simons was their most dependable player off the bench.
Zach Collins, solid player.
He was hurt all year.
Yeah.
Is he playing?
I think so. As far as I know, I don't know.
Mario Hazonia, you know how that goes. Hassan Whiteside, you know how that goes.
Yeah,
Nasir Little still isn't ready.
Supposedly Zach Collins will be ready to go.
Okay, Gary Trent can hit some threes, but outside of that, I really don't trust him a lot. Is CJ playing? Or did he?
I believe CJ should be playing.
Okay.
Like I don't think they've really lost anybody necessarily.
It depends. CJ.
Rodney Hood.
CJ was out for most of the time Melo was playing, wasn't he?
Except Rodney Hood like tore his Achilles or something. So maybe not. This is what happened.
I'm pretty sure CJ was out for most of the time Carmelo played.
Um,
Wasn't he hurt for like half the season?
I believe so. I think he was hurt a little bit early on.
Yeah, that's when Melo started. When he won Player of the Week.
Yeah, he had a couple good weeks, and
Yeah.
I think Carmelo's actually going to be a big factor for this team. I think. So do you think that it's basically going to come down to Memphis and New Orleans in that final spot?
Most likely. I honestly, I think Memphis has a real chance to do it because, like I said, I think John Morant. I think teams really aren't ready for what he's about to bring because his mentality is just on that level. Jaren Jackson is a mismatch for a lot of guys, even though there are a bunch of good big men in the West. Jaren Jackson is still he can score at all three levels at a very good rate. They've got other talent too. They got Brandon Clark, they got Dylan Brooks,
Mm-hmm.
and then what's the name of the dude he played a lot for them and played really well for them off the bench. I can't remember. He started some games too. He was the starting point guard in Phoenix last season, and then Memphis brought him in this year.
Talking about D'Anthony Melton?
Yes.
Okay.
He had ridiculously good stats in the moments he was in. Like all of their numbers went up when he came in the game. Like all shooting percentages, all like turnovers went down. So they're getting a lot of good play out of a lot of guys. Even Josh Jackson showed really good signs for Memphis before the season ended. So yeah, I think they have a really good chance. I think New Orleans still has some room to grow. Even though Brandon Ingram turned into a star, Zion is a young star, and yeah, Lonzo is a really good point guard.
Here's a good question. Who do you think has a better chance against the Lakers? I don't think either team has a chance to win, but who do you think has a better chance matchup-wise, Memphis or New Orleans?
Against the Lakers, New Orleans. Honestly, I think New Orleans. I think Zion, he's a bad matchup for almost anybody because he doesn't have like many post moves, but he's so quick down there. And as soon as he makes his move, he's so explosive that blocking his shot, there's not a good chance at it. Drew Holiday is going to
lock up someone.
Yeah, he's going to lock up and he's going to be a problem on offense. Brandon Ingram is a bad match. Like there are a lot of matchups that would be questionable for them. I think Kyle Kuzma might have a hard time with Brandon Ingram. He would probably have a really hard.
Yeah. I think the one problem in that matchup is that Anthony Davis could do whatever he wanted. I could see New Orleans.
That's the one thing.
I could see them slowing down LeBron enough, but Anthony Davis, I don't know what they're going to do. They got Derek Favors. I mean, maybe you play Jackson Hayes more because he's longer, but he's so young and
he's not ready for this.
Yeah, I don't
he's
exactly.
Not ready for this.
I think he would be your better option, but I agree. I don't think he's ready necessarily for that. I actually kind of like the Grizzlies in that matchup. The Lakers don't have anything for John Morant, especially now that Avery Bradley and Rondo are hurt or out.
Quinn Cook and Alex Caruso are getting destroyed.
Yeah.
Actually, if they put Danny Green,
I was going
to
to say that would probably be their option is that they would put Danny Green on him.
That would make Ja frustrated. He would still make plays, but his scoring probably wouldn't be as much.
Yeah, and then Brandon Clark would be interesting. Jaren Jackson would be interesting.
I actually think Brandon Clark would do a pretty good job defending LeBron.
And I think Jaren Jackson would be okay at guarding Anthony Davis because he's long and athletic.
I actually think that would be a really tough matchup for Jaren.
I think
he's so young. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He's still a pup.
No, I agree.
He's still an NBA pup.
I agree. I'm saying I think Anthony
going,
Davis
going against the caliber of Anthony, even though they're similar height, similar like build, I think AD would eventually be too much for him.
And I think that's going to be the problem with either of these teams is Anthony Davis because you can't put Jonas Valanciunas on him either. He's way too slow.
Way too slow.
So that becomes a problem for either team. But it's interesting because both are young, talented, up-and-coming teams. Excited to see them play. We got about 5 minutes left. Is there any other team that you want to bring up in this moment? That could be a surprise or something.
What do you think about the Mavericks?
Well,
how do Luka and Kristaps look?
Seeing as they're gonna have to play against the Clippers, that just seems really hard for them. Um, obviously, I think if Kristaps plays well, though, he's a nightmare matchup,
Absolutely.
especially for the Clippers. Especially for the Clippers.
He's pulling from almost 40 when he's hot.
Yeah. The problem is, in a playoff scenario, as good as Luka is, you got Paul George or Kawhi that's going to guard you.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he gets away from that, because if Kawhi is serious about trying to win another championship, he's going to guard Luka, and he's not going to let him go anywhere. And that's a nightmare. That's scary to even think about.
What does Dwight Powell do in that game?
Nothing.
I'm still surprised. I'm pretty sure they still start him at power forward.
I think so, too.
It is insane that Dwight Powell is a starting power forward.
He probably won't, though, because they do have Willie Cauley-Stein now.
I forgot about Willie Cauley-Stein.
So they might. I think personally,
if they paired Kristaps and Willie Cauley-Stein,
I think that's what they should do.
That would be something.
I think that's
with Montrezl Harrell down there. Even though he's really good, his size wouldn't match up well with them.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
And Zubac is too young.
Yeah. The problem is, like, out of Doncic, I don't see anybody stepping up. Seth Curry's had some good games down the stretch.
Tim Hardaway had a really good season. I honestly think he'd play really well.
Yeah.
Dorian Finney-Smith ain't afraid.
The problem is, like, if Porzingis isn't scoring 50 a night, you got Kawhi Leonard's going to guard Luka. Paul George is going to guard whoever else is scoring.
But who is guarding Boban? Who is guarding the 7'3" giant that fought John Wick, Joey?
I think they're going to let Boban do whatever he wants.
He almost killed John Wick. Okay.
I mean, Boban has, like, the highest efficiency rate in the NBA history. Nobody can do anything about him. He just can't play for more than 10 minutes.
But that touch.
So you give him 10 minutes and, you say, we're going to lose for 10 minutes.
With hands that large, I love the fact that he's, like, such a good shooter. It's phenomenal. It makes me wonder why other players that size could never
Can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think the Mavericks have enough weapons. They're a young, fun team, but Luka carries them in a lot of games. And that's the one matchup where he can't carry them. I can't see it. If the Mavericks win a couple games in this series,
that would be something.
I think Luka is, like,
the chosen one.
I hate to say it, because that's, like, basically what Chris was telling us about Luka. I might have to agree if they can win a couple games and Luka, like, carries them, because I don't know how he gets around Kawhi and Paul George. I just don't.
Yeah. He has to out IQ Kawhi, and that's going to be tough.
I can't even see it happening.
But I know a team we can finish on.
Okay.
Because they're still a wild card, even though they should be a title contender. The Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one.
Do you think they actually have a chance?
No, I don't.
Do you think it's that easy? Like, oh, nah,
Yeah.
You think they're out quickly?
I just think they haven't figured it out. And they're going to have to play possibly the Heat, I think. Oh, the Celtics. So maybe they're, because the Celtics are in a similar boat, but they got some young talent. I think
they've got dudes.
I think Kemba is hungry. But Embiid and Simmons are just not working. And I think
it works enough to get them 50+ wins and to the second round of the playoffs.
I think this is the year they could blow it up.
I don't think so. They're going to try to make it work as long as possible. Because I think not trying to make it work would make a lot of people angry. And right now, it might be the best thing. But in the next few years, when Embiid continues to get hurt, I don't think he's ever really going to get into, like, the best shape of his life. He keeps this immature mentality. Like, it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
I think going with Ben Simmons is their best bet, but I don't know if they're going to do it.
Yeah.
They love Joel Embiid is the face of that team.
I think that's another topic we can talk about maybe even next week if we want to talk more Sixers. The Sixers could be a long thing. Do you keep Embiid or do you keep Simmons? That's a big question.
It's simple to me, but for a lot of people it's complicated, but yeah.
I agree. But we'll have to talk about that later. Again, we'll maybe talk some more matchups, do some more theories on what might happen with more sports. Hopefully we'll get more news next week about whether sports are going to be played or not. And we'll see how teams are doing in the bubble for the NBA.
We need to do a Last Dance podcast soon.
Yes, we might just do that because if we don't have enough sports news, we'll go back and talk about stuff that happened. This has been Views from the Sideline. I'm your host, Joey Tysick. My partner, Malik Hill. We'll see you guys next time.